glory and boo-hoo-hoo, America. It's, or boo-boo-boo. I don't know how you say a Halloween good morning to you. It's Hugh Hewitt. I'm not there. I'm in Spain, and I don't know how they celebrate Halloween in Spain. I don't even know if they have Halloween in Spain. I'll tell you about it when I get back. Luckily, no trick for you. We have a treat. Mark Davis. That always means the bumper music is better. The professionalism is superb. The people have a smile on their face, and I'm very grateful to Mark Davis from Dallas. Take it away, Mark.
Thank you, Hugh. I appreciate that. And now, being me, I will now bog down on the rhetorical question that Hugh has asked. Do they have Halloween in Spain? It's like an old joke. Do they have the 4th of July in Canada? Well, of course they do. It doesn't mean anything. Well, I don't know if they have Halloween in Spain.
But we certainly do in America.
There you go. I got that. Yes, I do. I got the effects box. I'll make very limited use of it. But we will make extended use of some Halloween-themed bumper music. We do have a couple of birthdays, some chart history, the usual stuff. And I am Mark Davis from 660 AM The Answer in Dallas, Fort Worth. Tomorrow, Friday, Bob France, King of Cleveland Radio, will be with you. And then Hugh returns on Monday to report back on whether or not they actually have Halloween. Is Halloween just an American thing? Did we make that up? I don't know. Look, and let me give you the short Halloween treatise from me. I loved Halloween when I was a kid. I was at various times, and so I'm doing, let's call this the decade of the 1960s, because I was born in 1957. I was Casper the Friendly Ghost at one point, friendliest ghost you know. Fred Flintstone, couple of Supermans, some G.I. Joe, stuff like that. And had a fantastic time. Then I started to do talk shows for a living, and I would get the occasional call from someone who'd go, "Yeah, Mark, you realize that Halloween is a celebration of the devil." And my first thought was like, dude, what, really? And then I learned a key lesson, and that is to, if you don't absorb or agree with everything, there are, pagan roots, and there are people. I mean, I guess this probably is a big deal in Anton LaVey's Satanist circles or whatever, but I don't care. Your kid doesn't care. And I'll tell you this. If a parent wants to stop short of dressing your kid up as like the actual devil, because you don't want to make light of that, the cute little horns, the cute little pitchfork, the tail, okay. If you don't want to have your kids go out as something really creepy or disturbing, a vampire, even a witch or something like that, but having your kid dressed up as Bob the Builder or a soldier or something like that, please tell me how that's wrong. I've loved Halloween. Your kids love Halloween. Just get over it, and don't let the sliver of a few who might turn that to some dark purpose screw up the Halloween holiday. A couple of weird things. But before this show is over, I will share a story that I've shared locally a few times. Happened about 10 years ago. It is my favorite Halloween story ever. It happened to me at a grocery store. It is a story of abject humiliation, which is why listeners just love it when I tell it. I'll throw that in somewhere. Speaking of what your kid dresses as, Kmart in Australia, a couple of weeks ago, had a story of, oh my gosh, we're pulling a costume off the shelves. We've made a terrible mistake. And I thought, good Lord, what, is it some, hooker or some, meth addict? I mean, some horribly controversial costume. But no, it wasn't. You know what the costume was that they yanked from the shelves at Kmart in Australia? Bride. A bridal gown that you might stick on your 7-year-old girl. Now, I know there are 7-year-old brides in some, godforsaken parts of the world, and that's not good, but aren't we taking things a little too literally? Isn't it part of Halloween to dress up as something that you may someday be in adult life, either by profession or by life's path? Little girls want to grow up to be brides. One would think. Using this logic, if you send your kid out dressed as a construction worker, does that mean you advocate violating child labor laws? It's just there's no Halloween that can't be turned into weirdness in the talk show world. And so here we are in the talk show world, and the talk show world has phone numbers: 1-800-520-1234, 1-800-520-1234. You can follow me on Twitter and send me stuff. I take a look at it during breaks at Mark Davis, Mark Davis. And so we are underway. Now we have topicality. Today's the day. About 3 hours from now, the House will vote on impeachment. not articles of impeachment. Are you kidding? I still assert that may never happen. It's a resolution. It's the procedural roadmap on how the hearings might go. Oh, it's just a dog and pony show for the ages. We'll talk about that in a minute. We're going to take you through, and Dwayne and I have done an entire show ourselves off the air. Dwayne actually did an entire show on the after show, which you can enjoy on the Hughiverse, Hugh Universe at HughHewitt.com, the Hughiverse. Sign up for that. It is a snapshot, quite literally, of why the media are so hated and in some corners deserve to be. So I'll get to that here in just a second. But I cannot let this first segment go by. I knew this morning I would point in the direction of one Hugh Hewitt affiliate or the other. It might be to my southeast, down I-45 to Houston, to the listeners at the big 1070 The Answer, but nope, that's not it. That's where the game was, which means they lost, because for the first time in history, and this is so weird, 7 games in a World Series. I mean, best of 7. This went the full 7.
But in any sport, in any basketball, hockey, in anything,
home field, home court is
happened.
in evenly matched teams. Because I looked this up, and it varies. Evenly matched teams. I mean, if you're a terrible team, at home, you're still probably going to lose. But evenly matched teams, being at home gives you about a 63% chance of winning. Evenly matched teams. So a road win is an interesting thing. To get 2 road wins in a row, wow. 3 road wins in a row, wow. 4 road wins in a row. Now, in this particular case, it was 2 teams doing it. No home crowd went home happy. Not one. Not one, including last night, where at Minute Maid, it is the Washington Nationals who have snagged the World Series, 6-2. And Strasburg is the MVP. Rightfully so, with 2 incredible wins, including Game 6, which got them to Game 7. And so it is to the listeners of the big AM 570, The Answer, in Washington, D.C., long-suffering Washington. And I know a lot about that because I grew up there, grew up watching the Senators, who then came here. And the Rangers/Senators are now the second longest drought, because the Nationals/Expos, and this is kind of weird. How do you count this? The Expos have been around since 1969. So that's 50 years. Then the Nationals, then the Expos became the Nationals. So that's 50 years of futility, meaning not winning a World Series. But I think of it way more like this. And that's, when did the city last celebrate? And for the city of Washington, dude, it's 1924. And that's crazy. So it's been forever. It's been forever since the Redskins won a Super Bowl. Capitals have done well. I was there when the Bullets, the Bullets. We had an NBA team named the Bullets, and properly so, because bullets are fast and effective. No, can't do that. Let's take away the Washington Bullets name. Hey, what should we replace that with? Hey, Wizards. Great. Let's go with the occult. Stupid NBA. Anyway, even then. So I was there for the Dick Motta Bullets win, the 8 over till the fat lady sings championship over Seattle, late 70s. But Washington has been a success-starved sports city. So and I know with the booing, everybody hated the booing, and everybody, it's DC elites, and to an extent that's true, because that's big money at a World Series. It's big money at a World Series. But can a Southern Prince George's County boy throw down some love in the following way? Washington opens itself up for mockery. It is in many ways, pardon the way this sounds, because I grew up here, grew up there, I can get away with it. Not a real town. Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, those are real towns. I mean, they have a city identity. Like them, don't like them. San Francisco, real town. Los Angeles, not a real town. Miami, real town. You know what I mean? Just there's a cohesiveness. It's the nucleus, and everything else just emanates out from the central, like spokes in a wheel. Washington will never be that. And that's why doing talk radio there was so weird. And on the station that carries the AM 570, The Answer call letters, WWRC, which at one point was an offshoot of the NBC TV affiliate up on Nebraska Avenue. But then Greater Media, whoever bought us, moved us up to Silver Spring on Georgia Avenue. And I got to go back as a semi-functioning adult to the town where I grew up from 90 to 94. And many of you remember those days, and I appreciate it very much. it's what made talk radio weird, because here I'm in DFW and it's the most sprawling place I've ever worked. And if I live 50 miles west of here in Weatherford, or 50 miles east of here in Rowlett, not quite 50, these are people that's 100 miles, and yet everybody cares about everybody. And there's something cohesive about it. In DC, Maryland doesn't care about Virginia. Virginia doesn't care about Maryland. And neither one of them care about DC. But I'll tell you what, every single one of those subgroups cared about the Nationals. Congratulations on the World Series win. The story of the dog photo when we continue.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Alliance Defending Freedom.
Great. Here's the slide.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns for break in 4 minutes and 15 seconds.
Which was a great and he had to
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show returns from break in 5 seconds.
Those fingers in my hair, that sly come hither stare, that strips my conscience bare, it's witchcraft.
Sinatra from 1957.
And I've got no defense for it, the heat is too intense for it. What good would common sense for it do?
I mean, how many times can you hear Monster Mash, you know what I mean?
'Cause it's witchcraft.
So I thought I would gather some Halloween-themed stuff, sort of obliquely phrased. And by the way, nothing against Monster Mash, which every radio station will play 75 times. I was working in the lab late one night. Yeah, I get it. So we've got some slightly more arcane references there as we do have a little Halloween fun here on the Halloween Hugh Hewitt Show. All right, this was fun. This was admittedly fun. But boy, I got to tell you, you almost bury your head in your hands at how stupid some people can be. The media wonder why they are hated. I want to send you right to HughHewitt.com. Watch the stream. I think, Dwayne, Adam, I think they're going to toss up some slides to punctuate what I'm about to talk about. There's a visual element to it. I will paint the picture with words, but you can see it all as you do the video stream here. Howdy, here I am in the room, here at 660 AM, The Answer, Dallas, Fort Worth. At the middle of the day yesterday, in a masterstroke of imagery, we all know what a meme is, right? A meme is an internet image that goes viral. It's some picture, often doctored for effect. And the White House did this. They took an image of the president with a Medal of Honor in his hands. You know, the way in which the Medal of Honor is draped over the recipient's shoulders on ceremonies of the type that we've seen for our entire lives. They decided to superimpose a picture of Conan, the hero dog. And it's so the imagery is President Trump draping a medal around the shoulders of the dog. And in all caps, because it is a Trump tweet, it says, American hero. All right? Your fifth grader knows this is a meme. My dog knew this was a meme. I believe to the day I die that the media tormentors knew this was a meme, but it didn't matter. Because in today's media culture, the notion of the White House enjoying a moment of goodwill, having a little fun with it, that humanizes him. And so that's just not something that you can do. What is that, Dwayne? That is not the dog. That's somebody. That's some people have started.
My bad.
That is not Conan.
Maybe
that's
somebody,
Conan.
Maybe somebody needs to call the New York Times about that.
That's awesome. I looked up at the video feed, which I always ignore because I don't like looking at myself when I'm doing the show. So anyway, the New York Times, Trump tweets faked photo. And NYT Politics tweet, President Trump shared an altered photograph of himself awarding a medal to the military dog injured in the raid that killed the ISIS leader. The dog appeared to have been edited over a 2017 Medal of Honor recipient. Oh, the humanity. By the way, that Medal of Honor recipient from that photo, the guy who actually was used for the basis of the meme, loves it. Has no quarrel with it whatsoever. Britt Hume tweeted, the New York Times did a whole story on this with 2 reporters, and the actual Medal of Honor winner laughed about it and said he was not offended. Of course he wasn't. Only silly media people were offended. And now on the video feed, thanks, Dwayne, here's the dog putting the medal on the president. There's all kinds of fun. And then we move on to somebody else who had a picture of the dogs playing poker, which has appeared on black felt art since the beginning of time.
Like this right here?
Exactly right. And come at me, New York Times. Is this photoshopped? Oh my gosh! And then there were more. Hang on. Here is a helicopter with some Navy SEAL hanging off it, and a shark coming out of the water about to devour the ladder. Hey, mainstream media, can you confirm if this photo is real or not? Because I just saw it on Twitter. So then, what would the afternoon be without Jim Acosta, who then said a White House official said, quote, "The dog is not at the White House."
And we haven't even gotten to the Washington Post yet.
And so let's do that next. And then I'm having too much fun. I'll tell my Halloween story. We'll take calls. We'll get to calls on impeachment. We're just getting warmed up. Mark Davison for Hugh Hewitt. Stick around.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Job Creators Network Foundation.
That was better than I thought it would be, because I'm just peripherally looking up at this and the stuff you're saying. That's so awesome. Oh, that's cool. Oh, thank you. Now let's put the cherry on top with the Washington.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 5 minutes and 15 seconds.
Let's be above that. No, we're all in. All in. Good times.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 4 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 4 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 15 seconds. Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show break in 5 seconds.
From the Halloween music bumper library, some vintage stuff like Sinatra doing Witchcraft, and some Shakira doing She-Wolf. There you go. Little bit of everything. Little bit of everything. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Halloween. Mark Davis in for Hugh Hewitt. All right, the pièce de résistance, the cherry on the top of the ridiculous dog meme. I mean, it's actually an awesome dog meme, and the White House made awesome use of it, and it created a media meltdown that totally lends to everything Trump has ever said about media stupidity. I'm also, since we're in a kind of an upbeat, festive mood, apparently, I will share my Halloween story in a couple of minutes here, and and you will love it. Then very serious and substantive things will follow. Michael Lauren is with us today. Jim Talent is with us today. And you are with us today with anything you want to talk about on the impeachment frenzy or World Series, Nats champions, et cetera, et cetera. 1-800-520-1234, 1-800-520-1234. Now, but first, let me tell you what you did yesterday, some of you, and I thank you enormously. And I'm going to hit up the rest of you today because, as you know, we're in the real home stretch of the Alliance Defending Freedom campaign. And it's us trying to raise money so that they can help people whose constitutional rights are being trampled. Shopkeepers, bake shop owners, sign makers being compelled. It's funny, and it's not the customers doing it. A customer can walk in and say, you need to make a cake for my gay wedding. And the baker can go, well, I can't do that. And then they go down the street and all's right with the world, and that's America. But it's when the state government says, oh, no, cake maker, you must do this. That is a constitutional affront. And then what do you do when it's you versus the state? Well, you buckle or you go out of business. Until Alliance Defending Freedom came along. And they represent people who are facing that challenge for free. And they're able to do it because of you and me. And this is my last day of badgering you about this, but I'm going to do it because it worked yesterday. It worked awesomely yesterday. We made thousands yesterday for Alliance Defending Freedom. So no pressure. Let's top that today. Let's get Hugh back from España and talk about Viva ADF and hooray for all of you guys who gave us so much dinero in the following way. First, I want you to hear a little something. It's sort of $1,000 Thursday, and I want to raise $1,000 this hour, just this hour, and you guys are going to help me. Here's what I want to do to inspire you. U.S. Attorney General William Barr, in that wonderful speech you've heard a lot of here in the Hugh Hewitt Show, he reminds us that when the state of Colorado goes after a bake shop or the state of Washington goes after a florist, they're coming after all of us. They're coming after you. They're coming after your children. They're coming after our religious beliefs.
The fact is that no secular creed has emerged capable of performing the role of religion. This is organized destruction. Secularists and their allies have marshaled all the forces of mass communication, popular culture, the entertainment industry, and academia in an unremitting assault on religion and traditional values.
That's right. It's not just about one guy in a bake shop, one lady in a florist shop. All of our rights are in the crosshairs. ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom, will mobilize and fight and do it for free for people who are trampled in this way. I've told you how heroic they've been at the Supreme Court with a string of wins. That doesn't happen without you. It doesn't happen without your kindness. So if you've got $20, I've talked about $1,000 this hour. If 50 of you have $20, boom, look at that. We just did it. If one of you has 1,000, that's pretty cool too. So here's what to do. Go to HughHewitt.com, HughHewitt.com, and click the Alliance Defending Freedom banner, the ADF banner right up top there at HughHewitt.com. If you prefer to do it on the phone, we appreciate that too. 866-700-1060. 866-700-1060. 866-700-1060. Let's do $1,000 this hour. And then maybe next hour I'll get back with you and we'll see what we might do then. Okay? Alliance Defending Freedom banner at HughHewitt.com. ADF thanks you. Hugh thanks you. I thank you. Appreciate it. Let's do this for these good people at the ADF banner at HughHewitt.com. Okay. Previously on the Hugh Hewitt Show, guest hosted by Mark Davis, we had taken you to the penultimate chapter, next to last, of the ridiculous dog photo story. The dog is not ridiculous. The dog is Conan, the hero girl dog Conan. Welcome to these gender-bending ages. And the meme is cool. The photo is cool. And I'll tell you what the source of it was is our friends over at Daily Wire. Jeremy Boring, the COO, Ben Shapiro, who you probably know best over at Daily Wire, they said, let's do something. Everybody is loving on the dog. We're loving on the troops, but we're loving on the dog, too. And so let's do a picture of President Trump draping a medal of honor around the shoulders of the dog. Now, in order to do that, you needed a photo of the president draping a medal of honor around a real human being, and then you put the dog in, replace it, and there you go. Everybody loved it. Everybody, well, not everybody. So I told you about the various reporters, actual people with a brainstem, who mobilized team coverage and New York Times headlines that said the White House has faked a photo of President Trump placing them. They omitted an actual Medal of Honor recipient and replaced him with a dog. By the way, the actual Medal of Honor recipient, James McLaughlin, thought it was great. He gets it. The media culture does not. Imagine my surprise. So final chapter. The Washington Post. Alex Horton writes to Jeremy Boring, Chief Operating Officer at Daily Wire. Hello, I'm with the Washington Post. We wanted to get confirmation that this photo originated with you. And if it did, that you digitally removed Medal of Honor recipient James McLaughlin and replaced him with a dog. Jeremy Boring replied, I will clean this up. Alex, on the record, you've got to be blanking joking. Please quote me on that. Thanks, Jeremy. Now, Dwayne did this extensively on the after show yesterday, and he and I did a full off-air program before we even started today. Here's what every single bit of this is about. Are the media stupid? Careful. Don't answer too quickly, because the answer is no. They're not stupid. They are mentally twisted into a pretzel. These are people with high IQs. These are people who do well on Jeopardy. These are people with degrees. These are people who read books. Wrong books. But it is willful. It is on purpose. It is Trump derangement syndrome. They can't let this guy. Not only can they not, quote unquote, let him have a good day, as in the day that we killed al-Baghdadi, they can't give him a millimeter of credit for having a sense of humor, a burst of goodwill, a good-natured meme.
An ounce of humanity.
An ounce of humanity. Dwayne had exactly the right verb. It humanizes him, and he cannot ever be humanized. All right, so there we go. There's our full audio and video coverage there, thanks to the video stream. I'm going to play to the camera for a couple of minutes here and share this story. If you're driving around listening on radio, you will hear it, but I just want you looking right at the camera right now here in the mobile version, Texas version of the ReliefFactor.com pain-free studios. Because here on Halloween, there's a story I've trotted out for my local audience for about a decade now, because I think it was about 10 years ago that this happened. And I offer it for you now, and then we might get some audio in this segment. Michael Oren's going to join us. I wonder how Israel feels about the death of the ISIS leader. That's kind of cool. Former ambassador to Israel. We'll ask Michael, and we'll ask you and ask a bunch of guests, all kinds of cool stuff on breaking news and impeachment stuff and all the usual talk show red meat stuff that we love so much. 1-800-520-1234 if you want to hop online about that. 1-800-520-1234. But for just the next couple of minutes, join me in a recollection that still pains me to share, and you'll know what I'm talking about here in a minute. As I've already laid out to you, I love Halloween. I loved it as a kid. I love it as an adult. The kiddos come to the house, and I know that in these dangerous times, even going to other people's houses, like everybody's scared. So a lot of churches have fall festivals. A lot of shopping centers have trick or treat. A lot of places have trunk or treat, where they open up a parking lot and put candy in people's trunks, and you walk around. Just ways so that the kiddos can dress up and have fun. And also there are adults who dress up and have fun. I generally have not been one of those adults. I love Halloween, but I love it when I'm 10. I'm not walking around in my 40s, 50s, 60s, dressing up, like a vampire. But at a grocery store, at a couple of days before Halloween in 2009, 10 years ago, I'm just running a thoroughly routine grocery run at Tom Thumb, local franchise you'll find all over Texas. And at this particular Tom Thumb, the employees are very much into the Halloween spirit. So I go in, and I've just got a short little list of stuff. I'm going to be in the store for maybe 5 minutes. And I go in, and I notice that the employees at this store are all gussied up for Halloween. And it's really pretty cool. There's somebody dressed as Woody from Toy Story over there in the produce section. Somebody dressed as Darth Vader stocking the bread aisle. I thought, isn't this cool? This is cool. It kind of gets me in the Halloween spirit. So first thing on my list is I got to get a big case of waters, and they're at an end cap at the end of an aisle, and there's a big stack of waters. And I noticed there's a girl who works there. She's standing there, and she has an eye patch. And so I'm in the spirit now. So I walk right up to her, and I go, "Arr, Missy, I'll be needing some of those waters, don't you know?" And there was a pause, and she looked at me out of the one eye. I looked her up and down, and I saw no further evidence whatsoever of pirate regalia. And I began to slowly die inside. And I asked her, "You're not you're not trying to be a pirate?" And she just shook her head and said, "No, I'm not." She then told me about the recent eye surgery that she had in order to rectify some neurological disorder. And I just wanted to slink out and just kill myself in the parking lot. But she then ended my pain by chuckling a little bit and telling me two things. Number one, the surgery went well. The patch is coming off in a couple of days. Everything should be fine. And I was not the first person to approach her with pirate imagery. I took a deep breath. I got my case of water. I got out of there. Happy Halloween.
Drink up, me hearties, yo ho. Maraud and embezzle and even hijack. Drink up, me hearties, yo ho. Yo ho, yo ho. A pirate's life for me.
I heard that for the rest of the day, and every time I tell the story. Happy Halloween, Mark Davis, and for Hugh Hewitt.
Hey there, friends. I'm gone, but I have not forgotten ReliefFactor.com, my daily reminder. Even when I am out of the country and traveling, I like to remind people, especially those of you who are commuting this morning, that ReliefFactor.com is your friend. And if you've got an ache and pain this morning, you wish you had taken it, well, today is the day to go to ReliefFactor.com and order the starter pack. I yammer at you every single day, 3 times a day, at the same time every hour, that you ought to have taken your Relief Factor. Now, part of that is just to remind the tens of thousands of you who already have it, not to leave the house without it, but part of it is also to nudge some of you, especially my new markets that are added on every week, that ReliefFactor.com really does work. Icarian and curcumin, resveratrol, and omega, the 4 natural supplements widely recognized as doctors as necessary to your good health. It really does work. It really taken all the guesswork out of it, all the engineering out of it, perfectly designed. 4 supplements, easy to swallow. I take them every day. You ought to join the tens of thousands of people who do as well. ReliefFactor.com, that's ReliefFactor.com. Don't go another J. Join the 10,000s of people who use ReliefFactor.com.
Don't forget to sign up for the Huniverse. All of Hugh's broadcasts on demand, the after show, which in my opinion is worth the price all by itself, Dwayne FM, and all sorts of bonus content. www.huniverse.com.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show returns from break in 5 seconds.
Yo, VIP. Let's kick it. Ice, ice, baby. Collaborate and listen. ICE is back with the brand new inventions.
No Halloween imagery here. We got a lot of Halloween music in the bumper library, but we also do birthdays. Vanilla Ice, local product. 52 years old today. How about that? There you go. We do a little bit of everything around here. Mark Davis filling in for Hugh. And when I listen to Hugh, as all good Americans should, I love the segments that arise on a regular basis. Among them, the great segments we do with former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren. Let's talk. We've had some Middle East news of late. Mr. Ambassador, pleasure to talk to you, sir. How are you doing?
Great to be with you, Mark. Good morning.
Nice to have you. So listen, the easiest low-hanging fruit. I'm going to presume that the death of al-Baghdadi was popular in Israel.
It's whenever one of these guys goes down, it's popular in Israel. There's a lot of them waiting in line to take his place. We're kind of surrounded by him, but it's great, and it's at a time when people are beginning to question America's, commitment to the Middle East, to security, its commitment to sort of, sticking in there and stay in the line. It was a good message.
I had the great joy of coming to Israel in 2003. I'm way overdue for coming back. And when I came back here to Texas, I told people about, and this was right after 9/11, so our minds and hearts were very filled with the notion of a war on terror. And I said, you have to go to Jerusalem, and you especially have to go north. I went to a kibbutz called Misgav Am, up by the Syrian border, where rocket remains were still in the ground. I said, imagine being in Dallas-Fort Worth and having a terrorist attack lobbed at you from Oklahoma. That's a daily war on terror, in your face, hospitals filled with people who are feeling it. I offer that long intro to the question just to ask, ISIS is far less of a deal now than it was when Trump took office. It's not dead. There'll probably be some residual presence of it. And so how do you reckon, what's the definition of success in a war on terror?
I think in the 21st century, you don't win many wars. You don't have like Mount Surabaki moments where you're raising a flag on a hill somewhere. You stick it out. And Israel knows we have no choice but to stick it out. And we know that the war against terror and those who want to destroy us goes on daily. Now, you talked about 2003. 2003 was one of our darkest days, Mark. You should know. There was the second Intifada where there were no restaurants open. There were no movie theaters. You didn't go out of your house because of all the suicide bombers. We lost 1,000 civilians to suicide bombers in 4 years. That's amazing. You can put that in American terms. There's tens of thousands of Americans killed by suicide bombers. We stuck it out. And you do it by slogging every night and going out and fighting the terrorists. And right now, again, we're in a situation where Iran-backed terrorists are pointing not hundreds of missiles, but tens and tens of thousands of missiles at our homes from Syria, from Lebanon, from Iraq, from Yemen even now, and from Gaza. And we are bracing ourselves for another Middle Eastern war. We're looking to the United States to stick with us in that coming conflict because it's going to be a big one.
I certainly don't think there's any doubt that President Trump stands with Israel and that the kinship between our nations has perhaps never been stronger. But I wanted to ask you an interesting curveball question, because if we can get a near universal thumbs up for the death of al-Baghdadi, what about the withdrawal of troops from that portion of Syria? A lot of people referred to it as abandoning the Kurds. I don't know about that, but there was a big debate over whether that was strategically wise. How did that strike you?
Well, it caused a lot of concern in Israel, generally, because the issue here is impressions. We live in a world, particularly in the Middle East, where impressions mean everything. And it came on the heels of America's decision, the administration's decision not to retaliate for an Iranian missile and drone attack against Saudi Arabia, not to retaliate against Iranian provocations in the Gulf of Hormuz, not to even retaliate for the downing of an American drone aircraft by Iranian forces. So the impression in the Middle East is, well, America's not retaliating. America's pulling out. The Russians are going in. The Iranians are going. The Turks are going in. All these bad actors. And this is like a 2-hour drive from Tel Aviv, and it's not very far.
Yeah, indeed.
So there was a lot of concern.
30 seconds for something we could do an hour on. Should Turkey even be in NATO?
We have expressed grave reservations about it. I remember telling President Obama when I was ambassador, you don't know, you're dealing with this guy. This guy's a dictator. And this guy supports the Muslim Brotherhood. This man ideologically is much closer to ISIS than he is to the United States of America. We're talking about Erdogan here. Then he turns around and buys Russian advanced systems and tries to link them up with NATO systems.
I know.
That's an entree to NATO. That's very, very bad news.
Always a refreshing take. I love driving around and listening to Hugh talk to you, and it's an honor for me to be able to do so. Thanks, Dr. Oren. Thank you so much for being on the program. Dr. Michael Oren, former Israeli Deputy Prime Minister for Diplomacy and Ambassador to the USA. Follow him on Twitter at @DrDoctor, at Dr. Michael Oren, O-R-E-N. All right, let me set up the beginning of the next hour, because we don't go guest heavy for like another 45 minutes in another way when Jim Talent joins us. So that means a lot of you and a lot of me. So let me ask you as this hour comes out. Impeachment. Do you dread it, or do you in a weird way embrace it because Trump wins 40 states? Will the Democrats collapse on the way to their own silliness? Will the impeachment vote even happen? How do you see this going? Line them up, 1-800-520-1234, and I'll talk to you next, 1-800-520-1234. Mark Davis in for Hugh Hewitt on Halloween.
Alrighty. Some audio, get some telephone people, and off we go.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 8 minutes and 15 seconds. Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 7 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 7 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 6 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 6 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 5 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 5 minutes and 15 seconds. Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 4 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns for break in 4 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 45 seconds.
Okay, I have a question. What about? I'll do it.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
You know, which gives me a policy question, because there's other people and everybody's at once. I sometimes enjoy. Well, let's do. It's Halloween. Let's go in and see what. But meanwhile, get ready for some audio.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 45 seconds.
Yes, okay. Legitimizing call first. Then we'll go to Joe and see where he takes us.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show returns from break. 5 seconds.
morning glory and boo-hoo-hoo, America. It's our boo-boo-boo. I don't know how you say a Halloween good morning to you. It's Hugh Hewitt. I'm not there. I'm in Spain, and I don't know how they celebrate Halloween in Spain. I don't even know if they have Halloween in Spain. I'll tell you about it when I get back. Luckily, no trick for you. We have a treat. Mark Davis. That always means the bumper music is better. The professionalism is superb. The people have a smile on their face, and I'm very grateful to Mark Davis from Dallas. Take it away, Mark.
Hugh, thank you very, very much. In fact, this morning's bumper music is a little wacky. Being Halloween, I've taken a little deep dive into some themes that should be of interest here. And, of course, I've also brought out the Halloween effects box so that we can talk about, among other things,
The impeachment circus.
That's right, the impeachment circus.
What, did Sev Gorka just show up?
Exactly right. I have a Gorka button. The thing does have a Gorka button. You ready? Because
This is far more like demonic.
That's the Gorka.
That's a Sev Gorka
button.
button.
No. The Gorka button simply offers the enormous echo because everything Seb does seems to sound like this, even when he's like at Starbucks. Excuse me, I'd like to. Hang on a second. Where do we go? Excuse me, I'd like to have a green tea on ice with a plastic straw, please. That's the Dr. Gorka button there. The other one is for.
This is different.
So anyway, enough of that nonsense. Let us wide variety of calls. 1-800-520-1234. 1-800-520-1234. Let me give you a quick montage. If there's one of my favorite themes of the moment, and it's an important theme. Because if you are hitting social media, if you are reading mainstream media, and by the way, you should do not lock yourself up in your own bubble. Go see what these people are saying, hear what they are doing, because it is only in so doing that you can fight back against it, that you can say, I just saw the most ridiculous segment on MSNBC, or I just heard Nicole Wallace say the most obtuse thing, or I just saw Chris Cuomo say the most outlandish thing, or I just read the craziest thing in the Post or the Times. You can't do that if you're just living in your own cave. So to the extent that you can stand it, consume the other side, the opposition party that is the dominant media culture. Now, from that culture, you will occasionally get stories like this. Republicans are terrified. Republicans the White House is in crisis. The White House is melting down. They just don't know at any moment whether it's all going to collapse like a house of cards. The Republicans are in terror of being swept not just out of the White House, but maybe even losing the Senate majority. They are terrified of what may happen in 2020. It is a bomb waiting to go off. You'll see those stories every day. Every single one of them is a lie. Every single one of them is a lie. Now, the lie is, please understand what I'm saying, the lie is that fear is pervasive in the Republican Party, that we are slump-shouldered, that we are dispirited, that conservatism is in decline or in crisis, that the Republican Party is somehow dashed against the rocks. Trump has energized conservatism in the Republican Party in ways not seen in generations. Mitt's niece, Ronna McDaniel, is the GOP chairwoman, and she's one of the best of my lifetime. And let me just let you hear a little smattering as this impeachment nonsense rolls forward. Here are 4 lightning-fast excerpts. The first 2 you may not recognize. They are Oklahoma Congressman Tom Cole, Arizona Congresswoman Debbie Lesko, but then Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell, whom you will certainly recognize. Does this sound like a party that, with its tail between its legs, that is playing defense?
I think it's a sad day for the Rules Committee and for the institution of the House of Representatives. In my view, it's not a fair process. It's not an open process, and it's certainly not been a transparent process. It's been limited and closed, and frankly, I think we're moving toward a preordained result.
Here's Debbie Lesko.
And if you think this is fair, this is not fair at all.
They're trying to create something new that I think is just substandard and dangerous to the presidency.
The process seems to be treating chairmanship as though he were a de facto special prosecutor, notwithstanding the fact that he's a partisan member of Congress whose strange behavior has already including fabricating a lengthy quotation and attributing it to President Trump during an official hearing which he was sharing. No due process now, maybe some later, but only if we feel like it, is not a standard that should ever be applied to any American, and it should not be applied here to the President of the United States.
Correct, Leader McConnell. So where do these stories come from? Where do these stories come from? These fabrications that the Republican Party, they're often couched in paragraphs that are technically true. Republicans we talked to are terrified of what lies in wait in 2020. White House officials or White House Trump administration members who asked not to be named. I can always find you a weasel. I can always find you 1 or 2 or 5 malcontents. Mitt Romney's door is always open. The media culture will always be able to find whiners, doubters, milquetoasts who are willing to bag on Trump from within the Republican Party. They exist, and they are few, but they are loud. And so please understand that's exactly what's going on. When you see any story of Republican fear, Republican terror, Republican discontent, Republican dispirited angst, does it exist? Sure it does. But it is a tiny sliver of a Republican Party that, by and large, thanks God every day that Trump won. Every day. Now, your thoughts are welcome. Let me grab some calls. I envision a little multi-topicness, which I always enjoy. 1-800-520-1234, 1-800-520-1234. Real quick, though, let me also share something with you from our friends at the Job Creators Network. As I get ready to go to your calls, there's a lot of talk in Washington about health care. The Dems are making big plans, promising to make everything better and cheaper, even free. Everything's free. Have I told you that everything is going to be free? We've been here before. The last time politicians passed a big health care bill, we were promised we'd save $2,500 a year. What did you do with yours? I didn't get mine. And we'd keep our plans and our doctors. That was Obamacare. It didn't work out. Numbers don't lie. In 2019, 37% of counties across America had access to just one health insurer as a part of those infernal healthcare exchanges. Lobbyists, bureaucrats, politicians are making decisions that determine what kind of care you get. There's good news, though, a movement in this country to put you back in charge of your healthcare. It's healthcareforyou.com. Healthcareforyou.com from our friends at the Job Creators Network. Healthcareforyou.com. What happens there? You share your horror stories. Because I know we're dismantling Obamacare twig by branch. It's a process. And for this to continue, there has to be a good body of evidence that Obamacare was just a nightmare. So you should be in charge of your health care. It's your money, your care, your health. Go to healthcareforyou.com, share your stories, and they'll be put to very, very good use. Healthcareforyou.com, healthcareforyou.com. All right. Again, I always have a special place in my heart. I'll never gripe about what time I have to get up here in Central Time at 3-something to come do the Hugh Hewitt Show when there are people in the Pacific time zone up already and listening, for which I am grateful. We are in Los Angeles. Brent, Mark Davison for Hugh. How are you, sir? Hey, Brent.
It's a pleasure listening to you.
Thank you.
And I wanted to say, I too used to love Halloween. It was always a time of fun and innocence and a celebration for children.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been made horrible by Hollywood, by secular Satanists, by progressive pedophiles. And it's now, coming from Los Angeles, it's now a high holiday for homosexuality.
Well, here's what I would recommend. You're paying attention to the wrong people. Let's not let subgroups, slivers of people rob the joy from the 99.99% of people who love Halloween and have a great time. You dressing your kid up and sending them out into, a neighborhood, in Laguna Beach is in no way affected by an Anton LaVey satanic Bible convention that might be happening in another Los Angeles suburb. It just doesn't matter. Don't let naysayers, mischief makers, dark forces, politically whacked out people strip away the joy from something that we should still be able to enjoy. Does that sound good?
But yeah, it is. And I know in other parts of the country, it's still lovely and wonderful. But in Los Angeles,
you know what?
It just is dark.
I'm going to tell you, and let me fine tune it a little bit. As grown-ups, and honestly, as a grown-up, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to Halloween except the kids that come to my house, and I love that, and that's it. We all have the wherewithal to pay attention to what we wish to pay attention to. So even in Los Angeles, don't let those who have mishandled and warped Halloween strip away your enjoyment, or especially not a kid's enjoyment of it. No matter what's going on around you, you have the freedom to pay attention to what you want to pay attention to. I'm Mark Davison for Hugh Hewitt. Be right back.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Job Creators Network Foundation.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns for break in 4 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show returns from break in 5 seconds.
Put a spell on you. Cause you're mine.
Guess who? Definitely not Screamin' Jay Hawkins.
You better stop the things you do.
No, it's croonin' Nina Simone, the great Nina Simone. Singer, songwriter, arranger, civil rights activist. Doing a cover of the 1956 classic. It was offered up again by Screamin' Jay Hawkins in a far more gravel-throated offering. And a little bit of history on that. Mark Davis in for Hugh Hewitt, can you tell? So here's the deal. This also brings us to our mandatory Cleveland reference. Even the guest hosts have to beat you to death about Cleveland. Hey, just having a little fun here. Screamin' Jay Hawkins is a Cleveland native, and as he was rising through the ranks, he made the acquaintance of Alan Freed, the Cleveland disc jockey, who, of course, is pretty well responsible for the coining of and some of the embryonic forces of rock and roll. Put him on tour. And even Screamin' Jay, when he did this, you can go ahead and fade it out. Can't take the competition from Nina Simone. He wanted to sort of croon it as kind of a bluesy ballad, kind of a love song, really. I put a spell on you because you're mine. But then they all got liquored up and went nuts in the studio. I put a spell on you because you're mine. And they've said, that's great. Let's go with that. And a classic was thus born. I thought that's always a good part of any Halloween bumper library. Happy Halloween. Mark Davis in for you. All right, Tay, let's do a little phone call action in Orlando. And Tom, that is you. Mark Davis in for you. Happy Thursday to you.
Hey, good morning, Mark. Before I get to my point, I've got to say you are hands down my all-time favorite guest host. I heard you on Larry Elders a few days ago.
Thank
you. I just love it when I hear your voice, and sit in as frequently as you can, please.
I'm honored and flattered. Thanks so much.
All right. Hey, listen, in regard to your question about the impeachment, what makes me angriest about this impeachment is that the seriousness of this is lost because it is obvious to anyone who looks at it that this does not rise to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors. And my point is, any Democrat who votes for impeachment, knowing that this does not rise to that level, I hope they sleep well at night. If they vote yes to fall in line with the Democrats rather than voting on principle, you know what? What's the point?
But you've used very wise phraseology, because when you use the word principle, you use it in its objective meaning, that anybody of any party should cast an impeachment vote with a clear-eyed notion of, has a president, whether I voted for him or not, of my party or the opposite party, really committed an impeachable offense. But, Tom, that's earth logic. That's the way things ought to be, and we're a million miles away from that right now in today's Democrat Party, where the principle that the altar where they worship is, does it hurt Trump? And if it does, it's okay. And that's the principle that they operate by.
And that's what makes my head explode, is, just the sheer fact that they act in that way. It's like, can we put on our, we're all supposed to be adults here. And
I know.
Just this Trump arrangement syndrome just makes my head explode.
Well, let me ask you this. Is it possible, because I don't know, nobody's crystal ball works perfectly on this. Is it possible that the solution to this and that the payoff for this is that there will be a backlash for the ages? They can impeach, it will fail in the Senate, and Trump wins 40 states.
You know what? I'm a gambling man. I don't want it to get to the point where it goes to the Senate. I don't.
Well,
I just don't want to take the chance that suddenly, we get a bunch of weak-kneed.
no, the chance of they say never. I'm saying never. Trump will never be impeached by the Republican Senate. So within
fine. Then based on that, yes, I think there would be an incredible backlash, and I think the House will definitely return to the Republican hands.
Yeah. Ooh, hello. Look at slip that into the end, Tom. Thank you for your kind words and your call. Because listen, we talk a lot about the presidency. When we come back, let's take some more calls. We have got to win the House back. We have got to win the House back. How do we do it? Mark Davis in for Hugh Hewitt.
This portion of the Hugh Hewitt Show has been brought to you by MyPillow. Call 800-951-5493 or go to MyPillow.com and be sure to use the promo code HUGH.
That's right. We can sit here and we can bitch and fuss and moan all day.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 5 minutes and 15 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's right. It might have been a worthy idea in theory, that over time, not with today's Democratic Party. No.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 4 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 4 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show returns from break in 5 seconds.
Oh, she's sweet but a psycho, a little bit psycho. At night she's screaming, I'm on my mind. Oh, she's hot but a psycho, so left but she's right though. At night she's screaming, I'm on my mind. She'll make you curse, but she a blessing. She'll rip your shirt.
Any tune that starts out with a good scream seems to be good Halloween bumper music fodder. Little Ava Max and Sweet But Psycho. See a little of this, little Sinatra. You can tell I'm here, right? Mark Davis in for Hugh Hewitt. Bob France is in from Cleveland tomorrow, and Hugh Hewitt returns on Monday. All right, I got some audio and some calls. 1-800-520-1234. Do join us. I don't want to bury the lead here, but is it possible that the whistleblower has been identified? Maybe. And it's been funny because everybody's kind of tiptoeing around this. So what I'm going to do in about 2 minutes is I'm going to tell you the name that's in a bunch of reports. Now, the reason I'm going to do this unapologetically is I'm going to qualify it by telling you this is what some people say at Real Clear Investigations and some other journalism. And the other thing is, what have I told you every time I've been here on Hugh Hewitt, every time I've been on the other shows, every day on my local show here in Dallas-Fort Worth? There is no whistleblower. The whistleblower statute does not apply. You can't blow the whistle on the President of the United States. All this secrecy that's usually properly afforded a whistleblower does not apply here in the least. We've got to know who this person is in order to evaluate whether he, and it is a man, whether this person is believable, credible, and deserves to bring down a presidency. Boom. Now, when I say it is a man, does that mean that I know that the reporting is correct? Not exactly. So that's why I continue to qualify it. But as I told you yesterday, I had my friend, Texas Congressman Louis Gohmert on, and he says he totally knows who it is. He did not identify him by name, but I asked him, do you know who it is by name? And he said, yep. I said, is it a man so I can stop this pronoun game? He said, yep. So I will be referring to the whistleblower as he, and I will share it's not anybody you've ever heard of. It's some 33-year-old CIA guy. And by the way, God bless CIA guys. For the most part, but it's the weaponization of some of them who are still freaked out. The Trump one, they remain the problem. All right, let me have you help me solve a problem that we've got, and you're going to help me solve it this hour. You ready? The problem we've got is people's rights being trampled. People who are in business, and they presume they have a certain amount of religious freedom, First Amendment freedom, that if somebody comes in, let's say you have a cake shop, flower shop, sign shop, yeah, we'd like you to make this sign, make this cake, and you have to respectfully decline because it is in complete disagreement with your sincerely held religious views. That's called freedom of religion. It's called constitutional protection. You know what else it's called? Under attack. And that's why the Alliance Defending Freedom, we are so proud to be partnered with them at the Salem Media Group and across all the network shows and on all the local shows like mine here in DFW. But Hugh Hewitt has told you so much about Alliance Defending Freedom. Let me give you some context. Why do we constantly hit you up for money for Alliance Defending Freedom. Why are we doing this? Here is why. Because you can drive around on your way to your job. You know, on my way to my job, I'm driving along a Texas highway to come to a radio station at 4 o'clock in the morning and host the Hugh Hewitt Show. Your job, you may be getting up and driving to a law firm, getting up and driving to a restaurant, getting up and driving, to an accounting firm, getting up and driving to a landfill, where, I don't know, whatever. Work is good. All work is good. All jobs are good. And maybe this problem will never befall you. Maybe your constitutional rights will never be abridged. Good for you. However, when it happens, we are all in the line of fire. Attorney General Bill Barr reminds us that the hard left, whether it's activists or people in the hard left who are in government with that wacky Colorado Commission on Civil Rights, what a lovely name, but they're trampling the rights of citizens, and when they do it, you are in the crosshairs. You are the target. You, your kids, your religious beliefs.
The fact is that no secular creed has emerged capable of performing the role of religion. This is organized destruction. Secularists and their allies have marshaled all the forces of mass communication, popular culture, the entertainment industry, and academia in an unremitting assault on religion and traditional values.
All right, this is my last crack at you today. So here's what I'm going to do. You guys, yesterday, man, can I please thank everybody that ponied up yesterday? We made a few $1,000s yesterday. Woohoo! Look at us. Well, listen, look at you. You did it. I just yammered about it. But so here I am back again because I think we can do even better today. So $1,000 Thursday is what they call it here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. And by that, it means every hour that I tell you about this, we like to go cha-ching, cha-ching with another $1,000. For Alliance Defending Freedom, so that they can represent for free the next people whose rights are trampled, because someday it may be you. Someday it may be you. ADF wants to do this. They're racking up win after win after win after win after win at the Supreme Court. If they run out of money, they can't do it. So can I ask you for your 20? Can I ask you for your 50? Can I ask one person to make this $1,000 hour with your $1,000? It's asking a lot. Well, guess what? You're doing a lot. And here's how you do it. I appreciate whatever you have, and thank you so very, very much. The phone number is 866-700-1060. 866-700-1060. Give them a call. Say, I got $20. I got $100. I got 1,000. If you do. And if you do, thank you so much. Or click it online there at HughHewitt.com, the ADF banner, the Alliance Defending Freedom banner, right there at the top of Hugh's homepage at HughHewitt.com. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because if we have another big day like we did yesterday, the folks at ADF will have a pile of money that they can call on. Because guess what? These people who own these bake shops, flower shops, etc., they don't have a pile of money. They're just business people. So they don't have $1 million attorney on retainer. So what can they do? They can call Alliance Defending Freedom. But Alliance Defending Freedom won't be there if we're not there for them today. So let's be there for them today. 866-700-1060. 866-700-1060. Or the Alliance Defending Freedom banner there at HughHewitt.com. All righty, let us roll to Newfoundland, Pennsylvania. Very cool. It just sounds chilly. Bill, hi. Mark Davison for Hugh. How are you?
Hey, hi, Mark. This is Bill.
So I hear.
I'm calling you from Newfoundland, Pennsylvania.
Okay, gotcha. In Canada, it's Newfoundland. In the Keystone State, it's Newfoundland. Got it.
Yeah. On the impeachment. So, as religious folk, and I try to look at everything from various perspectives. Common sense is got to be number one. Religious people have common sense, right? And when I look at this, I think the Democrats are going to overplay their hand, because that's what they do. The left overplays their hand all the time. Why is that? I go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and Paul talks about delusion and not embracing truth. When we fail to embrace truth, not only embrace it, but love the truth, he says, then we will fall into delusion, and that will be multiplied. Now, aren't the Dems multiplying their delusion? The further they go off the deep end,
I know. I mean, the short answer is yes. The short answer is yes. But here, this can be perplexing, because I see things through the same lens as you do. But we have to understand as believers that doesn't mean that every era will make sense. I mean, Obama got elected twice. Clinton got elected twice. All this reference to truth that's in Scripture, all these things that we stand for, believe in, vote for, doesn't mean we're always going to prevail. So let me take what you've offered with great gratitude. But just so everybody knows, if we could look at that and talk about the Democrats overplaying their hand, which they're totally doing, but if we don't fight hard and fight smart, we're going to have President Elizabeth Warren, and we'll have no one but ourselves to blame.
Well, I agree with you, Mark. You've got to do your portion of responsibility. That's fundamental to life as a Christian. You don't do your portion of responsibility, there's no kind of spiritual help that's going to help you. It's really not. So, but when I'm reading about Jeff Scherer's book on the revolution, and what we learn in history is that 3% of people that will stand strong, stay strong, can really turn the tide. So you're exactly right. We have to do our responsibility.
That is exactly, and pardon my brevity, got to scoot and do it again. Got to talk whistleblower here for a second. You're absolutely right. And in fact, the notion, let's talk a little bit about being prayerful. Have you, as a Bible-believing, Second Amendment supporting Christian conservative, if I can I just described most of you, all right? Have you ever had somebody come at you after a horrible shooting or something and mock your thoughts and prayers? And say, you just want to do nothing, as if praying for a better world is nothing. It's not just sitting there and praying. It is praying for better child rearing, praying for better security in schools, praying for wiser governance, praying for constitutional leadership. We pray, and then we act. We pray, and then we vote. Okay. Is the whistleblower 33-year-old CIA analyst Eric Ciaramella? Ciaramella? I don't know. And by the way, I don't know if that's him. I'm telling you, that's the name that is circling widely. Real Clear Investigations yesterday published the name of the person they believe is most likely the whistleblower. If it's not, whoops, okay, another story will be down the pipeline. If it is, hooray, now we know who it is. The reason, and it's funny, I'm watching a whole lot of TV shows in particular saying, well, there's a reported name out, but we're not going to say it. Why not? I just did. Ain't nobody come to the studio knocking on my door. And number one, I've qualified it in order to be a responsible broadcaster by simply telling you, here's the name that's out there. The reason there is zero stigma to this is because if we're right, and it is 33-year-old CIA analyst Eric Ciaramella, then he's not a whistleblower. He's a leaker. He's a Trump-hating, swamp-dwelling person in the CIA who shames that agency with what he's been trying to do. And if that's the case, needs to be called down on it. Mark Davis in for Hugh.
Hi, it's Hugh Hewitt. No matter who is sitting in for me, I do want to remind you about AndrewandTodd.com. AndrewandTodd.com. Take care of everyone who listens to this show. They take care of our guest hosts if they need to get their home refinanced or they want to buy an investment property. Colonel Kurt, Mark Davis, Bob France, all the people who sit in for me, I mean, they're rolling in dough. They do this for hobbies. They're out there. They're big real estate investors like you should be. And if you want to invest in real estate, go to AndrewandTodd.com. Time for you to diversify out of stocks and bonds and cash. Time for you to get an income-producing property. The person who will get you qualified, Andrew Del Rey or Todd Avakian. And you can find them at AndrewandTodd.com. Answer a few questions. Tell them you want to become a real estate investor. They'll be right back to you with the best offer, the best rate. They'll also help you find an agent no matter where you are in the United States. AndrewandTodd.com can also be reached at 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172. Don't wait another day. AndrewandTodd.com. Everyone, please don't forget ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. Mark uses it, I'm sure, in his Dallas studio. I keep it in my California and in my Beltway studios, and I have taken it with me abroad. I don't think it'll be any trouble getting through customs. They'll say, what's this? They'll say it's a miracle. It's actually ReliefFactor.com, and I'll explain to the customs agent Icarian and Kirkman, Resveratrol, and Omega. Don't you have those in this country? And I'll explain to them as well that those are the 4 natural supplements that work in concert with your body to provide temporary support for the minor relief of aches and pains. complaints. I yammer at you every single day, 3 times a day, at the same time every hour that you ought to have taken your relief factor. Now, part of that is just to remind the tens of thousands of you who already have it not to leave the house without it. But part of it is also to nudge some of you, especially my new markets that are added on every week, that ReliefFactor.com really does work. 4 supplements, easy to swallow. I take them every day. You ought to join the tens of thousands of people who do as well. ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. Get started today.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Alliance Defending Freedom.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show returns from break in 5 seconds.
Leaves are falling all around. Time I was on my way. Thanks to you, I'm much obliged for such a pleasant stay.
Laying down all kinds of Zeppelin here these last couple of days. Always with a reason, and not just because I love them. Yesterday, a little Fool in the Rain because we were 40 years past the release of In Through the Outdoor. Or now a little Zeppelin 2 and Ramble On because Zeppelin 2 was released 55 years ago this week. spreading the tunes and helping everybody feel old. Mark Davis in for Hugh Hewitt. And as I said last hour at this time with Michael Oren, it's great to do the show and talk to the folks who I drive around and listen to Hugh when he speaks with. In this particular case, former U.S. Senator for Missouri, the great Jim Talent. Welcome, Senator. How you doing?
I'm fine, Mark. Yeah, you're bringing the old days back.
Yeah, yes, I am, and proudly so. Hey, you only have to go back 2 weeks to find something that I wanted to talk to you about, and that is a wonderful piece that you wrote for National Review. I talked to Ambassador Oren about the Syria pullout. There's nearly unanimous love for the killing of al-Baghdadi, but the Syria pullout was controversial, and you wrote a wonderful piece in National Review earlier this month, essentially saying, hey, Trump used the options he had. Make that case, please, because I think it's really valuable.
Well, I mean, what I was reacting to was the idea that we had betrayed the Kurds. I said that Trump did everything he could do for the Kurds, short of sacrificing America's overriding national interest in the region. In other words, the only option he had that he didn't use was to threaten or go to war, or, if you want, a lesser military action against the Turks, which would have been a disaster, and not even his critics are suggesting he should have done that. In part because the Turks are, like it or not, still a NATO ally, right? But short of that, look, he used the diplomatic tool all over through the spring and the summer. He threatened the sanctions in order to constrain how Erdogan did the incursion. And to this point, anyway, it's been successful. I mean, nothing is 100% successful in the Middle East. But he's made some real progress, and that was just the point that I made. I mean, look, the Kurds were an ally against, and are an ally against ISIS, not against the Turks. We never promised, and wouldn't have promised, to fight the Turks for them. So I thought he did what he could. All of this, by the way, Mark, is downstream of decisions that were made 6-7 years ago about Syria. So that limits the options that he's got, and he did what he could.
Everybody should go find that piece written by Jim Talent in National Review. In our remaining couple of minutes, I want to call on your experience in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. Impeachment frenzy continues. You were in the House for the Clinton impeachment. Compare then and now for me, please.
Well, the process is starting to catch up now to the politics, because they're going to vote on an actual, resolution, which they really should have done in the beginning. And I would have liked to see this being conducted in the Judiciary Committee, where there's more process. I doubt that there were real intelligence reasons for doing this in the Intel Committee. But the broader issue is this, Mark. Is a president forbidden from doing what he would otherwise be perfectly entitled to do, because he has, at least in part, a political motive for doing it, right? So, and the answer to that question surely has to be, well, in the vast majority of cases, no, he's not, because otherwise you're never allowed to trade one official act for another. To take the most basic kind of example, I would be forbidden from saying, when I was on the Armed Services Committee, I will vote for the defense bill, but only if you include F-18s.
Right.
Because even though F-18s were very good for the Navy, they were produced in my district. Did I have, at least in part, a political motive for wanting them, including my elections?
Of course.
I mean, I did, and it's very common. So I think that's the question we're going to have to start focusing on here. Trump wanted help in investigating corruption that could have had its roots in the Ukraine. It was perfectly okay for him to want that. The question is, well, if he did have a political motive of any kind, was he therefore forbidden from doing what otherwise he could do? And I think the answer to that is no, but I'd like to see some debate on the real question.
But I almost might edit the question a tiny bit in the following way, with your permission. And that is, does a president get to root out corruption in a foreign country? Must he stop that effort because he happens to stumble across a political rival?
Exactly right. And in fact, you could flip this, Mark. You could say, if he had not tried to investigate Biden because he was afraid of the political blowback that he's now getting, that would have been a political motive, right? If he said, gee, I think we should investigate the situation with Hunter Biden, but I'm not going to bring it up because I'm afraid people will attack me and it will hurt me in my reelection.
Boom.
You see how
There you
this
go.
works?
I
You
do.
can be
And
damned
they-
if you do and damned if you don't. in this situation, right?
Welcome to 2019. This is why we love you. It's why I love listening to you on Hugh, and why I love to get to chat with you when I get to be here. At Jim Talent 1L on Twitter. Thank you, Senator. Appreciate it so much as always.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
That is Jim Talent. I'm Mark Davis, and I think people are asking the question sometimes in a flawed way. They're saying, "Well, was it right or wrong for the president to be, calling on Ukraine to help investigate a political rival?" That was not the driving force. That was not the locomotive. The driving force was Ukrainian corruption, election meddling in 2016. What's he supposed to do? Stop looking because the Bidens are involved? Let me give you a hashtag. Joe Biden is not above the law. Joe Biden is not above the law. Mark Davison for you. Be right back.
All righty. Possible. This is going faster than yesterday. Now we go guest crazy. So this is awesome. So I'll be right back.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 8 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 7 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 7 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 6 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 6 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 5 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 5 minutes and 15 seconds. Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 4 minutes and 45 seconds.
That's my first question. And I think what I'm going to do is sort of open this out with a quick hit of website and phone number without the bar.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns for break in 4 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 15 seconds.
Yeah, which
The Hugh Hewitt Show on
If
the
it's the
Salem
Facebook guy,
Radio
I would-
Network returns from break in 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show returns from break in 5 seconds.
glory and boo-hoo-hoo, America. It's our boo-boo-boo. I don't know how you say a Halloween good morning to you. It's Hugh Hewitt. I'm not there. I'm in Spain, and I don't know how they celebrate Halloween in Spain. I don't even know if they have Halloween in Spain. I'll tell you about it when I get back. Luckily, no trick for you. We have a treat. Mark Davis. That always means the bumper music is better. The professionalism is superb. The people have a smile on their face, and I'm very grateful to Mark Davis from Dallas. Take it away, Mark.
Thank you, Hugh. I will, with pleasure. We have great guests this hour. We have some Halloween bumper music this hour.
I have the effects box this hour.
We got all kinds of things going on, as we say.
Happy Halloween.
To everyone. I should do the entire show like that. In fact, no, I should not and will not. But let's dive right in. Whenever I get to guest host for Hugh, and by the way, hi, Mark Davis, 660 AM The Answer, Dallas, Fort Worth for my real gig. But of course, a sliver of that here in the Salem Media Group is I get to slide into that Larry Elder show, hop on in for Dennis Prager, get up in the middle of the night to do Hugh Hewitt, stuff I love, and I always appreciate it. And when I do, I know we're going to do breaking news and whatever happens overnight, but then I go taking a look at stuff that I've stumbled across that strikes me as interesting or inspiring. And that happens a whole lot at the Federalist. You know, Molly and Sean and everybody doing great work over there. But in this particular case, we get to say hi to David Marcus, who has written a wonderful piece. I've been very much on top of the whole transgender mania. And let me enter into it in the following way. If for people who are actually experiencing gender dysphoria, I can't imagine that nightmare. I lift you up in prayer for gender clarity. I don't want you mocked. I don't want you made fun of. I don't want you mistreated. Now, that said, gender warriors and the obliteration of the meaning of male and female is a scourge on society. It can be something as little and annoying as the stupid pronouns that everybody's tap dancing around, or it can be as serious as a little boy chemically castrated, which we managed to save his life here in Texas from a pediatrician mother who wanted to turn a little boy into a little girl. By the way, if that mystifies you, how can she do this as a pediatrician? Well, she's just following the advice from headquarters. The American Academy of Pediatrics says, if you got a second grader, a boy who thinks I'm a girl, go with that. Affirm that. Those people are insane. Now, there are a lot of ways to point out the dangers, ludicrousness of stuff. And David Marcus's column is, in the new transgender world, women no longer exist. Now, you got to pop into this column with an eye toward exactly what he's doing. He essentially says that there's no such thing as a woman. There never has been. There isn't now. Woman is just a slur used by the patriarchy to keep non-binary, gender-neutral, trans people in a box. The very notion that women exist keeps so many people from being able to exist. It must be made clear that womanhood just doesn't exist. This is a great piece of writing. David Marcus, welcome. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Thank you for the kind words.
This is, and listen, you've taken it in exactly the right way. This, as a piece of writing, it essentially says, it says this is what these views mean. That when gender differences don't matter, womanhood doesn't matter. And I think the spark for this is a lot of guys pretending to be women winning all the sports championships in women's sports.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the trans issue is something that I've been writing about for an awfully long time. And one of the things that's interesting about it is that it creates strange bedfellows, specifically radical feminists and conservative traditionalists, who are not typically people that you would think of as sort of sitting down at Thanksgiving dinner together and getting along. Mm-hmm. But on this issue, for slightly different reasons, they're really on the same page, because what a lot of feminists have said, forever, going back decades, is that being a woman is not about cultural stereotypes. That if you have female body parts, you're a woman. It's not about wearing dresses. It's not about being docile. It's not about any of these things. And the trans movement runs completely counter to that. Because if somebody can say, I feel like I'm a woman, and that means I'm a woman, well, what does that mean? What can they be referring to? They really can only be referring to cultural stereotypes. I like the color pink. I like dresses. I like dolls, not action figures. So in an interesting way, the trans movement really runs counter to traditional feminism, just as it runs counter to conservative traditionalism, which obviously acknowledges that there is a difference between men and women.
Yeah, we can become a different religion. We can become a different nationality. We cannot become the sex that God did not make us. And I invoke God because I want to, but others may not want to. But it is science. It is science that defines this as well. Biology identifies two genders. Is this a battle that the pendulum can swing back, or is the act? I mean, there are people who are blistered as haters if they fail to celebrate the discovery of another elementary schooler who thinks he's the wrong sex.
Yeah, I think it can swing back. I mean, what we need to do, one thing we need to do is look at the rest of the English-speaking world, specifically places like the UK and Australia, where, in part because of their nationalized healthcare system, this fight has been going on a little longer, and you do see the pendulum swinging back in those places as the pro-trans people get sort of more entrenched. But one of the things is there's been a slow-motion collision course going on between the trans movement and public policy. 5 years ago, everybody said, this is such a small group of people. What does it even matter to you? Just, go along with it. Who cares? The problem is that in situations like prisons and shelters and sports and a whole host of legal and public policy areas, our society draws a distinction between men and women. We don't want men in women's prisons and shelters and et cetera. It's playing women's sports. So to the extent that it intersects with public policy, there's a problem, because if you're going to draw a distinction between men and women in public policy, you kind of need a definition for men and women. And so that's where I think, with the Trump administration's decision last year to change the Obama rules about how the federal government defines gender and sex, that's where I think you're going to see an increasing movement away from just blind acceptance of trans ideology.
In our remaining minutes with David Marcus, whom you can follow on Twitter at Bluebox Dave, I've mentioned him there in the Federalist pages with the trans article. Let's pivot over to David Marcus in the pages of the New York Post. Share with me some of the logic in your current piece. Trump needs to use full force against this impeachment charade. This is no time for faint hearts.
Yeah, this is a piece that came out this morning. Jonah Goldberg from the formerly of National Review and now of the Dispatch wrote an opposing piece in the Post where she's essentially arguing Trump should apologize. Say, hey, this was bad. I shouldn't have done this thing. Let's try to turn the page and move on. I think that's folly for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, it's just obviously not Trump's brand or style. But two, when you look at what's going on with this situation with the phone call and the Ukraine, the facts are basically agreed to. The question is whether Trump's actions were inappropriate. And you have a whole bunch of career diplomats and military people who say, yes, this was inappropriate. You have more overtly political appointees like Ambassador Sondland who say, no, the president was elected president, so he gets to decide foreign policy. The aid eventually got released. What's the big deal here? This is just bickering that went on while we decided what we were going to do. To me, that's a fairly compelling argument, in large part because these arguments happen all the time. Like career diplomats, I mean, look at the Paris Accord, look at the Iran deal, thousands and thousands of hours to work through these negotiations. All of a sudden, there's an election. Trump comes into office and says, I don't want it. Stop it.
Thank you.
So, that's a tension that exists in every democracy, right? We can't upend the government every time there's an election. But on the other hand, elections have to have consequences. The American people didn't vote for Bill Taylor. The American people didn't vote for any of these career diplomats whose work I respect. But at the end of the day, they voted for President Trump, and he gets a lot of leeway in how these things get dealt with. And quite frankly, I think we've just got to fight this tooth and nail.
Completely agree, because there's a sort of, as I say, earth logic that says if you messed up, say, okay, my bad, maybe I should have handled this a little differently. But that's in a normal world, not with the jackals that occupy today's media, today's Democrat Party. The slightest overture legitimizes their attack. David Marcus at Blue Box Dave on Twitter. Great in the Post, great in the Federalist, and wonderful to meet you and wonderful to have you on. Thank you, sir. David Marcus. You bet. My pleasure. And in fact, David touched on something that let me come out of this segment before we pivot to a couple of other things. And in fact, we have a little window for call. Oh, look at us. We do a little window for your phone calls. Anything going on? And because we're going to talk to Heather McDonald on when diversity goes astray and a number of other things before we are done. So grab a line, 1-800-520-1234, 1-800-520-1234. We'll do a lightning round with a couple of callers, make them, and you can be one of those right now. But that's the bottom line. There's a lot of these career people, these people who have sort of had their way for a long time. Trump upends that order. They freak out, and that's the cause of their neurosis now. Mark Davis in for you. Be right back.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
With the window, I'm going to do the quick ADF and the culture warrior. Like right now. I'll take care of those.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns for break in 4 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 45 seconds. Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show returns from break in 5 seconds.
When I look out my window,
Greatness of Donovan.
many sights to see.
Remember Sunshine Superman, Mellow Yellow.
When I look in my window,
That is one trippy dude, man, Donovan.
so many different people to be.
That's a lot of weed going into this composition. Little Season of the Witch for your Halloween. Say what you will about Donovan. That was some pretty interesting psychedelic stuff. And probably nobody hung out with the Beatles more than Donovan. So he has interesting stories to tell even to this day. All right, I got a couple of stories to tell. And then you guys are going to tell me stories on the phone. And we'll share our stories and have a lovely time here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Mark Davis in for Hugh from 6:60 a.m. The Answer in the big DFW. First up, is this the last day? Is this it? Are we done? For Culture Warrior of the Year, we had this wonderful idea, and you guys just took to it. Man, did you take to it. It was so cool. We said, we want you to nominate people who have been fighting to keep the culture, between the ditches, to keep the culture on track. We're sliding off our moorings in so many ways. Give us people, and we'll hone it down to a list of about 6, and then let everybody vote. And the 6 you guys came up with are just aces. I mean, they are great. Charlie Kirk, young man behind Turning Point USA. Candace Owens, please, she's everywhere, including PragerU. Alan Sears of ADF, about whom more just a moment. The greatness out of Hollywood, the liberal pit of Hollywood, but there's Gary Sinise. Abby Johnson, who moved from abortion clinic employee to pro-life activist. And Franklin Graham, son of Billy, an amazing pastor in his own right. There are your 6 nominees. Get ready to vote. Just do it right now at HughHewitt.com, HughHewitt.com. Click that Culture Warrior of the Year, and we're going to report back a winner to you very, very soon. All right, we are all winners when our constitutional rights are fought for, and when victories happen in the Supreme Court. Coming up at the end of the show, we're going to welcome a gentleman from Alliance Defending Freedom who'll tell you where your money's going today. Because I'm going to hit you up real quick right now to give us a 20 or a 50 or 100 or 500. You sense where I'm going. Because all these stories you hear, a cake shop owner here, a sign shop owner there, a florist there, just respectfully saying, I'm sorry, what you're asking me to do here is antithetical to my beliefs. And then the state kicks in and says, no, you must do this. That is a huge violation of rights, and they're coming for you next. Alliance Defending Freedom fights for this every day, and fights against this every day, and fights for you, and they represent people for free because you and I throw them a 20 every once in a while, or throw them 100 every once in a while. Please do that right now at HughHewitt.com. We're closing on the end. We're just about at our goal. You can help us get there today, maybe even this hour with your 20, your 50, your 100. The following ways to do it are HughHewitt.com. Click on the Alliance Defending Freedom banner, and also a phone number, which is 866-700-1060. 866-700-1060, or the ADF banner at HughHewitt.com. All righty, we are in Atlanta. Peter, hi. Mark Davis in for Hugh. How you doing?
Hi, Mark. I'm fine.
Hey, good.
My son is 6 years old. He is a transgender female to male individual. As you can imagine, I love him with all my heart. Excuse me?
That's insane. I hope you do, but
no, Mark, it's not insane. It's my child.
There's no such thing. There is indeed. And the minute I'm sorry, he was born male and flipped, or the other way around?
Other way around.
Okay, born female. The minute this little girl came to you, you know what? As a matter of fact, not at the moment. I'll give you the last word. The minute this little girl came to you and said, I think I'm a boy, it was time for counseling and prayer. Anything other than that, I love you, was child abuse. I swear to God, I lift you up in prayer, but there's no getting around that. Go ahead, take the last word.
We did do counseling. Did you know that 42% of transgender people attempt suicide at some point in their life? However,
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do, because they're screwed up psychologically. There is no such thing. I know I am, because one of us has to care about your child. One of us has to care. There is no such thing as a transgender child. There is still time. I pray for gender normalcy in your family, but I can't do it for you. God help you. God, I mean that seriously. And your child. I lift you up in prayer. Be right back.
Okay, there's only one caller. I'm glad it was that one. That was fun. Gee. 6. It's complete child. Oh, God.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 5 minutes and 15 seconds.
Oh, as we said yesterday, how about if he wants to enter into a willing sexual consent relationship with a 40-year-old? Yeah. Yeah. Hey. If you're in a sexual decision, let's go all in. I bet this is so...
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 4 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 4 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 15 seconds. Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show returns from break in 5 seconds.
In the cool of the evening when everything is getting kind of groovy, I call you up and ask you if you'd like to go with me and see a movie.
This is kind of low-hanging fruit for Halloween, isn't it? Spooky. Classics 4 from 1967.
And say, alright, love is kind of crazy with a spooky little girl like you.
You might remember a cover of Spooky by the Atlanta Rhythm Section in 1979. You know why? Shared personnel. J.R. Cobb was in both bands, Classics 4 out of Jacksonville and the ARS, and a producer named Buddy Bowie behind both records. So, boom, there you go. All righty, listen, this just off the last call for 1 second before we welcome a woman I've loved for a long time. That was incredibly valuable for not just for those 2 minutes that of radio that we got out of it. It's not about the radio for this. This was a gentleman whose 6-year-old girl came to him and said, "I think I'm a boy," so they're turning her into one. This is not radio fodder. This is an opportunity, and I'm grateful, so grateful to him for calling. He may not be thrilled that he called because I delivered some truth that this is child abuse. I want you to lift that family up in prayer with me, please, for them, please, for gender clarity. Listen, if you're 45 walking around saying, "I'm a man, but I feel like a woman," that is stone cold gender dysphoria. We can talk about that all day. If no child is capable of this. No child is capable of this. Every state, starting in my state of Texas, must make it illegal for any parent or any healthcare professional to chemically, surgically, hormonally try to alter the gender of someone before the age of consent. All right, back to that in just a second. Heather MacDonald is at the Manhattan Institute. I've loved everything she's ever written, I think, but especially this. And this is about race and how we're all, speaking of all of us being 8 years old, I sometimes think about that in the way in which we deal with race. And she has a wonderful book out now called The Diversity Delusion, How Race and Gender Pandering Corrupt the University and Undermine Our Culture. Heather, welcome. How are you?
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Mark. It's a real pleasure.
Listen, let's talk about it. My pleasure to have you. There's a little story that's a big story, and then we'll talk about the broader issue. The little story is out of Madison, Wisconsin, where we learn. Let me hand it to you in the following way. It's about the N-word. If somebody calls somebody one, I guess if a white person calls a black person one, because black folk can use it interchangeably almost as a term of endearment. I actually get that. Okay. But if a white guy calls a black guy the N-word, it's terrible, it's execrable, there should be consequences. That's not what happened in the Madison schools. A black security guard was being buffeted by the N-word from an unruly student and said, "Hey, stop calling me the N-word," except he used the real word. And the security guard got in trouble. Explain.
Well, the security guard got in trouble because Madison before that had a ridiculous rule that ignored a very basic distinction in language use, and that's the distinction between using a word, as you described it, to say, derogatorily say, you are a N-word, and use that with contempt, versus simply quoting it, mentioning the word in an abstract context. 6 teachers have already been fired in the Madison School District. I've surmised it's inevitable they've all been white for reading from classic books of black autobiography like James Baldwin that had the N-word in it. So that the teachers were reading these passages aloud. They were not using these words derogatorily against any student in their class. Nevertheless, under this zero-tolerance policy in Madison, they were all fired for simply mentioning the word in an abstract context. So that's the background here. You have a zero-tolerance policy, no discretion, everybody gets fired. So this black security guard had been verbally abused by a black student who had just stolen another student's cell phone, and had started attacking an assistant principal who had tried to intervene. The security guard was called. This black student, who is a senior, even though he has only collected 8 high school credits, so Madison has a typically destructive policy of social promotion, launched this tirade against this black security guard, who then said back, "You can't call me the N-word, don't say that." So the security guard gets fired, which is perfectly consistent with everything Madison has done up to that point, because his use of the N-word was no different than these 6 teachers who had already been fired. What was interesting about this moment, and very telling, Mark, is that his firing gets turned into a example of Madison's racism by the students, by Arnie Duncan, by Cher, by race activists throughout the country. This is absurd. This shows how desperate the country is to try to gin up phony instances of racism, because the fact is that they are so few and far between at this point. America is not a racist country, and yet the national religion of the country's elites is anti-racism. They are desperate to try to find examples of America's ongoing bigotry. And so the firing of this teacher, which had nothing to do with race, it was automatic under a policy that the Madison School District, which is one of the most left-wing districts in the country, had adopted to protect black students. This becomes an example of Madison's racism.
And you provided the answer to my exact other question. That is, why does this happen? So in our remaining couple of minutes, that's exactly it. Racism does still exist. You can find the occasional white supremacist. But if indeed these are on the ash heap of history and driven deep into the caves, that is bad news for anybody who ideologically needs America to be a seething cauldron of racism, because then the left cannot run in on its white horses and save us all.
Well, right. You see, with the Democratic presidential field, identity politics, the diversity delusion, this poisonous ideology of racial division, race hatred, and the phony conceit that America is endemically racist, that is now their running platform. And, Mark, I'm just not willing to concede, that the type of racism you're talking about is at all of a problem. This is the least racist country in the world. And, the place I've experienced racism is up on 125th Street in Harlem. I've been told by the residents of one housing project, Johnson Houses, not to go to the Taft Houses next door because they really hate whites there. I'm just not willing to concede it. There's not a single mainstream institution in this country that is not tying itself into knots to try to hire and promote as many so-called underrepresented minorities as possible. We provide endless opportunity, and I'm not going to fuel that discourse any longer. But yes, there's an entire industry based on this. The schools are obsessed with phantom racism. The universities are. They are teaching people to see oppression where it doesn't exist.
Heather she invoked the diversity delusion, and that is the name of her book. Go get it, The Diversity Delusion. And Heather MacDonald is at the Manhattan Institute, and that gives you her Twitter handle at HMD at MI, at HMD at MI. Heather MacDonald, a pleasure to have you. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks so much for being with us. All right, let me pivot to a call or two here in our couple of minutes before we wrap up. We have certainly had some transgender issues earlier on, so let us go to Philadelphia. Keith, Mark Davison for Hugh. You are on. Happy Thursday, happy Halloween.
I'm sorry, did you call for Keith?
I did, Keith. How are you, sir?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear that. I'm great, thank you. I wanted to make a couple comments, but back into the transgender issue. First of all, as far as Heather McDonald's discussion, academia is full of the latest collection of stupid, smart people you can possibly imagine.
Tell me.
Remarkable.
Tell me.
And also, I just want to recommend, as I know you have, to many people, Attorney General Barr's speech to the law school.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable speech that I think every conservative needs to read for a clarion call to action. I'm a pediatrician, and the American Pediatrics is a wonderful advocacy group for children in general, but they're really skating on thin ice with these issues. I've actually don't even belong anymore. I'm no longer a fellow of the American Pediatrics because of that.
I have to suggest to you that you're being incredibly kind, maybe out of respect for somebody in your industry. If the American Academy of Pediatrics is good on other issues, that's wonderful and hooray. But if they are advocating affirmation, if a second grader says I'm the wrong sex, that is advocacy of child abuse. They know that it destroys their credibility. It should destroy their reputation. Every pediatrician should disavow them completely for that position alone.
I agree. I even believe in adults what surgeons are doing mastectomies on college students, I think should lose their licenses for that, much less doing things on children.
Well, adults get to do what adults get to do, and we can like it or not like it, but it ultimately boils down to being none of our business. It's everybody's business if people are trying to erode and destroy the differences in genders. It's everybody's business if they're jacking with the language through bizarre pronouns. Ultimately, though, we can comment on those things, but we can't step in and say no in another adult's life. We must step in and say no when parents try to turn their little boys into little girls and vice versa, because there factually is no such thing as a transgender child. Mark Davison for Hugh Hewitt. Stick around.
Hi, it's Hugh Hewitt. No matter who is sitting in for me, I do want to remind you about AndrewandTodd.com. AndrewandTodd.com. Take care of everyone who listens to this show. They take care of our guest hosts if they need to get their home refinanced or they want to buy an investment property. Mark Davis, Bob France, all the people who sit in for me, they're rolling in dough. They do this for hobbies. They're out there. They're big real estate investors like you should be. And if you want to invest in real estate, go to AndrewandTodd.com. Time for you to diversify out of stocks and bonds and cash. Time for you to get an income-producing property. The person who will get you qualified, Andrew Del Rey or Todd Avakian. And you can find them at AndrewandTodd.com. Answer a few questions. Tell them you want to become a real estate investor. They'll be right back to you with the best offer, the best rate. They'll also help you find an agent no matter where you are in the United States. AndrewandTodd.com can also be reached at 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172. Don't wait another day. AndrewandTodd.com. Time now for ReliefFactor.com, my daily reminder. Even when I am out of the country and traveling, I like to remind people in the country and listening, especially those of you who are commuting this morning, that ReliefFactor.com is your friend. And if you've got an ache and pain this morning, you wish you had taken it, well, today is the day to go to ReliefFactor.com and order the starter pack. I yammer at you every single day, 3 times a day, at the same time every hour, that you ought to have taken your Relief Factor. Now, part of that is just to remind the tens of thousands of you who already have it not to leave the house without it. But part of it is also to nudge some of you, especially my new markets that are added on every week, that ReliefFactor.com really does work. Icarian and curcumin with Veritol and Omega, the 4 natural supplements widely recognized as doctors as necessary to your good health. It really does work. It really has taken all the guesswork out of it, all the engineering out of it, perfectly designed. 4 supplements, easy to swallow. I take them every day. You ought to join the tens of thousands of people who do as well. ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. Get started today.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Alliance Defending Freedom.
Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 45 seconds. Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 1 minute and 15 seconds. Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 45 seconds.
Let's talk it one last time.
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show returns from break in 5 seconds.
A little REM for our final segment. A little What's the Frequency, Kenneth? You know the story behind that, don't you? First of all, the occasion is the 25th anniversary of the release of the REM album Monster. Michael Stipe and the boys. Yeah, What's the Frequency, Kenneth is apparently a derivation of what somebody said to Dan Rather as they beat the crap out of him on a street in New York in 1986. That's the story Dan told. It made Dan seem even weirder than usual, if that's possible. But it turns out the story is kind of true, that the guy was a kind of a mentally twisted soul who thought the TV networks were trying to get inside of his head. And a few years later, the guy who beat up Dan Rather killed a stagehand at NBC. And this was so long ago, he's out, got paroled a few years ago. So there's more information than you could possibly ever need. The information I've given you today for Alliance Defending Freedom, you have kindly let me just wheedle and prod you lovingly because this is that important. Because if you right now can cough up a 20, cough up a 50, cough up 1,000, just saying, you can help pay the freight for ADF's ability to represent for free the people whom they have rescued in Colorado bake shops and Washington florists and places all over the places. Their constitutional rights are trampled. And if we don't do this, they may not be able to help the next people who need their help. Bob Trent is VP of Communications for Alliance Defending Freedom. Bob, I just wanted to bring you on to say hi and thank you for the partnership and let you tell everybody where their money goes, because there's no shortage of cases like this. Welcome. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Tell me about it. We'll never run out of cases, so that's why we need to keep you guys floating in support.
Well, we certainly see a rise in the number of requests that come in. In fact, we get hundreds of requests every single month for people needing help, seeing their fundamental freedoms being challenged in almost every area of their life. The right of them to freely live and work according to their beliefs, or free speech and civil discourse on college campuses. We have 400 victories on college campuses in support of free speech, and yet there's still much more work to be done. And now we're having to deal with boys competing in girls' sports in different areas around the country. We filed a complaint in Connecticut recently on behalf of 3 girls who suddenly find themselves competing against boys and missing out on opportunities to win state championships. It is, I think, more than ever, a time to have a group like Alliance Defending Freedom.
And I'm so glad you mentioned those examples, because it's easy to drive around and go, well, that's a bake shop, 2 time zones away from where I live, even though the principle is valuable. And if we're asleep at the switch when they come after this guy, where will you be when they come after us? It is about the broad definition of gender, our ability to have biblical views of things. It's America. You can believe anything you want, but people with certain beliefs are being trampled on, and ADF is there, and we're just very, very grateful. And I hope that in my couple of days of filling in and Bob France tomorrow, I hope we get a burst of money that heads y'all's way. So, because you do this for free. Most of these people who have their rights trampled don't have $1 million lawyers on retainer, and that's why you guys are there.
Well, that's absolutely right. Most of our clients, none of them are activists. They just showed up at work one day, or on a campus one day, or at a track one day, and just expected to be free to, act according to their beliefs, or just act freely. It's more than just the right and the freedom to believe. It's the freedom to act consistently with those beliefs, and that freedom, the freedom to act, is what's being challenged. The fact is that they don't expect to be in that situation where they either have to file a lawsuit against a state or local government, or that the state or local government is coming after them.
That's
it. It take 7 figures to get a case like Jack Phillips from the local court all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yep, it is expensive, and it happens because of folks listening right now, helping Alliance Defending Freedom. Bob, it's a pleasure to meet you. We so cherish the partnership here at our company, on the shows nationally and locally. It's great to have you, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate everything you do.
Well, I tell you what, thank you. And let me tell you what I'm going to do is I hit the exit here and leave it for Bob France tomorrow. Alliance Defending Freedom. How can you help? How can you help protect the next citizen just like you? I'm not even going to make it a cake shop owner. I'm not even going to make it a florist shop owner. I'm not even going to make it an athlete who's running against, a girl athlete running against boys. It could be you in your walk of life with your rights trampled. Alliance Defending Freedom will be there for people like you, but only if we keep them afloat. with our kindness, here's what you can do. Go to HughHewitt.com, click on the ADF banner, HughHewitt.com, Alliance Defending Freedom banner, and throw us a 20, please. If 100 of you throw us a 20, woohoo, that's a lot of money. Of course, if one of you throws us $1,000, that's pretty cool too. Both of those are permitted, by the way. HughHewitt.com, the ADF Alliance Defending Freedom banner, or on the phone at 866-700-1060. 866-700-1060. All right. So with that, we're done. Till the next time they call me. Bob France is with you tomorrow, and Hugh Hewitt is back on Monday. God bless our country and our troops and our families. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Hugh. Thank you, listeners. Follow me on Twitter at Mark Davis. I'm going to go do my local show. Man, am I prepped for that. And we'll see you down the road. Mark Davis in for Hugh Hewitt. Have a fantastic day and happy Halloween.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Alliance Defending Freedom.
Yeah, please. Hello, thank you. And avoid funeral homes and go for high school athletics.